Hello, everybody. A really important sociological concept, and one that sometimes people have difficulty grasping, is the idea of structure, and the idea of specifically when we talk about structural inequality. And there's an assignment where I ask you to think about this and respond to it. And so you're evaluated on your ability to comprehend this idea. I wanted to create an additional video that illustrates what we mean by structural inequality. So remember that, or structural barriers, right? Back in chapter 1, we talked about social structure and personal agency. Dean, I think I used the example of you have the structure of the classroom, which is where all the chairs are, and the individual has individual agency where they sit down. And in this chapter, we're talking about the structure as a kind of barrier. I ran across this image back in the early days of the COVID vaccine that was illustrating the idea of the structural barriers that are built into the vaccination system. And some of these do a better job of illustrating it. But one of the structural barriers that the article talks about, and you can link it if you wish, is that in some places, vaccines are only given out to people who have cars, right? And so that means that if you don't have a car or someone to drive, as you see in this image here with this individual and this individual, they don't have access to the vaccine, not because they're not individually eligible or that they're for some personal reason, they simply don't have access because they can't access the structure, which is a car and the line to get it. This image over here, I believe, is illustrating that in many instances, people couldn't get signed up for a vaccine if they didn't have access to the internet. So if you don't have access to the internet, right, that structure, that economic structure, then you can't get a social good. Not because we're trying to exclude people and intentionally trying to exclude people, but it's just part of the social structure. Like, people aren't sitting around saying, how can we make this hard for folks? But if you are in a particular place, going back to that triangle, and I don't have my shape anymore, if you are in a particular place in the economy and that place doesn't have a car or doesn't have the internet, you don't get access to that good. This one down here, I believe, is illustrating English as a second language. So if you don't understand English, I'm honestly not real sure what these two are intended to represent. But the idea is that structural barriers are when something, and another example I use is if there's no jobs. You could be very hardworking, but not be able to pay your bills because there's no jobs in the community. After this assignment is the one where I ask you to watch a video about Tammy and offer some structural solutions to Tammy's situation. How can society change, or could it change, to make life better for her? I hope that makes a little bit more sense as illustrations of social structure.